Self-doubt is one of the biggest destroyers of inner peace. It actually creates procrastination. It creates burnout. It is at the core of destabilizing mental and emotional health. My client was going through this for a long period of time in her life, and she sabotaged her business. She would question everything that everyone said. She would question herself. She would question others, and it totally jeopardized her business and her health and well-being. In this episode, I dive into what you can do and what I shared with her in order to overcome this and actually start to flourish. You can overcome self-doubt. You can actually begin to flourish despite having all of these negative thoughts impacting your life. If you are ready for that, this is the episode for you. Let's jump in. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to this week's episode of the podcast. Now, in this episode, we're going to be diving into one of the number one problems that most people face. And I say most people because very often when we struggle with self-doubt, we think that no one else has it. In fact, you look at other people's lives and they're flourishing in one area or another of their life, and wherever you're looking, you're feeling as though you're lacking. And in that moment, what will happen is that you will compare yourself and you will think that you're alone, but you're not alone. So that's the first thing. So self-doubt is a problem that most of us have. It is actually a human condition, and it is not something wrong with you. So that's the first thing. But as we go into this episode, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you 4 things that you can do. This is educational for sure. It doesn't replace therapy, but this is a lesson, or these are lessons from the science of the nafs psychology and therapy. And this is what I take my students through as they go through a process of training in the science, overcoming their obstacles and doing what they do. So very importantly, it's important to understand it and to apply it. So in the process of doing this, what you're going to find is that you're going to find yourself being impatient. And you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Innal insana khuliqa halu'a. Indeed, humanity, like humans, you and I, we've been created in a state of impatience. إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ جَزُوعًا. If something terrible or bad happens to you, you fall into a state of anxiety, and this is the reason why we become impatient. So what you are needing to do in a moment when this is happening is that you apply these 4 things and you apply it patiently. It's the patience in application that actually gives us results. So let's get into this. I want you to think about the self-doubt that we often struggle with, and we are automatically in a state of insecurity. We go through these different phases of our life, and as soon as something happens, what ultimately happens is that you have all of these thoughts about your life. You start questioning yourself, you start questioning everything, and as you start to do that, what will happen is you will fall into an automatic state of anxiety or fear. Now, you won't, very often we don't feel it as though it's fear, but we start to worry and we start to stress. And when you start to worry and stress, then you know what's happening is that you are falling into this state of, almost anxiousness. And even though we're not aware of it, what's happening is that we're overthinking on the things that we doubt. And one of the ways that we do this is that we ask ourselves all of these negative questions. You ask yourself these negative questions, it throws you into doubt, it throws you into uncertainty. And I find this very often with my clients as we're going through this journey of, really changing the state of their mind and disconnecting from the fear and the anxiety. What is necessary is that you got to stop asking yourself these negative questions. So that's number 1. If you are asking yourself negative questions on a regular basis, you will throw yourself into a state of doubt, and you will compound this the more you ask these negative questions. Very often we think that we're just being smart, we're just making sure everything's okay, and out of the fear of the outcome, what you fear that is going to happen, what you fear of the future, you want to make sure that everything's okay. So you're asking yourself all of these questions. And when we ask ourselves these questions, the questions are in the negative. And when it's in the negative, I want you just to imagine this. Your negative question is a negative thought. And negative thoughts, what they do is that they induce a state of anxiety, a state of uncertainty. And when you are stuck in a state of uncertainty for a long period of time, it will actually plague you like chronic anxiety. And chronic, when it becomes chronic, meaning that it's like so regular that you can't escape it, then at that point it becomes debilitating. And this is what happens to most people when they question themselves in the negative. So if you are doing that, this is the first thing you want to stop doing. You want to stop questioning yourself in the negative. You want to stop questioning everyone else in the negative. And when you do that, then what will happen is that it will slowly start to abate. It will slowly start to dissipate, and you will slowly feel better. You see, the problem with this state of self-induced anxiety is that it creates more uncertainty, more doubt. And the more you do it, the more you are stuck. And very often we find, like I find, my clients who are, high achievers, like very ambitious parents and, therapists and coaches like alike. All of these people, they are really trying to establish a lot of good in their life and help other people and do all of the things that they want to do. But we get caught up. In this state of uncertainty. And the thing about uncertainty is that it destroys your well-being. It destroys your mental, emotional, spiritual well-being. And Allah tells us this immediately as soon as you jump into the Quran. As soon as you begin, Allah tells us about this book. Allah says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This is a book, there's no doubt in it. See, the thing is, you need certainty. Because when you have doubt and you have this constant array of negative questions and thoughts, and it just throws you into this uncertainty, and it makes you feel this state of fear, which is, in the beginning, it's like surface level. It's under the surface, and you don't really recognize it. And, like I said, many of us, we ask these questions and we think we're just making sure everything's going to be okay. And really what we're doing is we're inducing the fear and the anxiety, and it keeps us in this uncertainty. So that's the first thing. So the second thing is, if you are in a state of constant uncertainty, what will happen is you will become impatient. And as you become more and more impatient, you want everything quick. You want results quick, because the problem with uncertainty is that there's a level of deep fear that lies underneath that. And this is one of the things that stop us from actually moving forward in our lives, from progressing, from flourishing. And even when you do flourish, many of my clients, they are coming in and they're, business owners, they're ambitious professionals who are doing different things in their lives. But what happens is that this self-doubt, or the constant state of doubt, it actually slows them down. It has them question everything. And what we tend to do when we get into that state is that you're either going to procrastinate because of the fear of getting it wrong, and then you're trying to get it all right before you take any action, or you're going to take too much action. And very often we take too much action when we are trying to make sure that we cover all bases. And if you're trying to cover all bases and you're overworking, then what's going to happen is that you're going to end up in this boom and bust cycle. Like you boom, everyone praises you, and you're thinking you're doing everything right and everything's great, and you do the work and you do exceptionally, but you do so much work. By the time you finish, you feel totally burnt out. You feel mentally, emotionally exhausted and physically exhausted. When you do this over long periods of time, what will happen is that it will actually impact your physical health, not just your mental health, but your physical health. And when it impacts your physical health, what will happen, and what happens for many of my clients, they get to a stage where they don't want to get out of bed. They don't want to get up and into their life, and they feel anxious about beginning their day because of all of the things that they know they have to do. And what's happening here is that, once again, because of the overdoing to prevent what we fear, we overdo it, we overwork, and we try and cover all the bases. And really what happens is that you end up exhausting yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically. And this is because of this impending fear. And when I say impending fear, what you're fearing and what very often we fear is because of the uncertainty of the future. And because we're doubting the future, then what we inevitably do is that we end up back into fear about the future. And when you end up in fear about the future, what will happen is that you will create again this state of uncertainty, this state of doubt, and you will question everything. And the worst of this is that you end up questioning yourself. And then if you get stuck in this for long enough, and this is what I see all of the time, is that when we get stuck in this, state for a long period of time, then we start to question Allah, because we're making a lot of dua. You're making dua, you're asking Allah, you're hoping that, you get a solution. But the thing is, you're anticipating the worst. And as a result, and why are you anticipating the worst? Because of all of those doubts. So what ends up happening is that we start to question Allah. We start to disbelieve in our dua. So you're making dua, but you don't believe you're going to get the answer. And this is the effect of uncertainty, fear, doubt. And what are we fearing? I want you to think about this. What are we fearing? We're fearing the future. We're fearing this impending doom or gloom that we've created mentally, because the future doesn't yet exist. But because we've created this from a place of self-doubt, then what's happening is that in the future, it actually it doesn't impact us in the future, but it actually impacts us in the present. It's the future in our mind that impacts us in the present. So this is what will happen, and this is actually what will make you procrastinate or make you overwork. And either way, it's the same cause that's creating it. So what do you do about getting over your fears? I mean, the first thing I've already suggested to you is that you stop asking yourself in the negative. You stop questioning yourself in the negative, because that will induce all this uncertainty and fear. And so what we want to do is that we want to change all of this. And here's what I always take my clients through, like as they go through a certification process, as they go through training, as they learn, because I train coaches, right? So the thing is, this is what the coaches will do for you, is that you will go through a process and you will learn to change 4 things. These 4 things, these are essentials in the process of overcoming this. Number 1, you have to get away from the fear. You see, fear is an emotion, but it's based upon uncertain belief or uncertain thoughts, like the uncertainty of your thoughts. Your thoughts are inducing this fear, and what will happen is that you get stuck in it. So what do we need to do? We create belief. Like, we create big belief. And here's the thing, the very thing that most of us fear is the future, because we're believing in the present that this future is going to be awful. So what we do instead is that we create this big belief in the future. And believing big in your future is the opposite of doubt, because you have doubt and you have belief. Belief destroys doubt, and doubt destroys belief. So the thing is, this is fundamental in the deen. This is what we're taught in the deen. The very first thing that Allah tells us in the Quran is that there's no doubt. This is the book where there is no doubt. So that belief there that Allah gives you is actually destroying the doubt that you and I are going to be plagued with throughout our lives. Now, here's the thing about doubt. Doubt is normal, and it is a part of life. And the reality is, because look, Allah said, that humanity, innal insana khuliqa halu'a, like we've been created upon this state of impatience. And why impatience? Because we are automatically falling into this state of doubt because of the thoughts that we have, the negative thinking and the incessant thinking. When you have negative incessant thinking, you will naturally fall into doubt. And the doubt creates uncertainty, which is the opposite of belief. Belief creates total certainty. So what we do in order to overcome this is, number 1, you have to create, or you have to believe big. And here's the thing about believing big. Believing big is all about choice. Belief is a choice. What we think and feel is a choice. Even though you may have heard before that you can't do anything about your emotions, you can't do anything about that. The reality is that you can. The science of the nafs is a Quran and Sunnah based methodology. It's a psychology, it's a behavioral science. We use it to overcome every struggle, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, right? Now, how do we do this? We do it because the fabric of the human mind is the state of your thinking, believing. And so when you are willing to choose and believe big about your future, about your life, what's going to happen is that the certainty of that belief, the more you believe, the more you are certain. And the certainty of your belief will actually trump the uncertainty, and it will actually debase the doubts, the disbelief that we have. And this is almost like a struggle between belief and disbelief, right? And I don't want you to get into this theological mindset and, what I mean by that is that your doubting is tantamount to not believing that it could be possible for you to have a great future, that you could have a great life. But the minute you start believing, what will happen is that your beliefs, as they get stronger, your uncertainties, they get weaker. And this is uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable process, which takes us on to number 2, which is the discomfort of anxiety. The discomfort of anxiety is actually a good thing. Now, it's not always a good thing. If you're in chronic anxiety, that's no good. But the doubt, that when you strengthen your beliefs, it overcomes the doubt. And what that does for us is that it makes us certain. The certainty of life will actually give you the ability to get what you want. It's not good if it's chronic, like you're constantly stuck in it. But when it is good, is that it makes you move. You see, Allah created us impatient because we want the good immediately. When we don't get the good immediately, we become impatient. But it's through that process of waiting, forcing yourself to be patient, continually believing. Like, belief is like a choice, but you got to continually believe. And as you continually believe, what will happen is that you actually build strength in your beliefs. You actually build confidence in yourself to actually show up and do what it takes. You can override the initial anxiety, the initial feeling of discomfort. That discomfort, you can call it anxiety, you call it discomfort, but ultimately that discomfort, you can handle it. You can handle it, and actually it will drive you to move. Because why it's good is because it forces you to change. It forces you to move. And if we were stuck in a constant state of comfort, we wouldn't create a thing. This is the state of humanity. This is why Allah created us in this state of impatience, because the impatience, it requires you to be uncomfortable. It requires you to be slightly anxious. But that discomfort and anxiety, what it does is that it pushes you to move. It pushes you to become active. We become mentally active, spiritually active, as in we become more connected to Allah, more reliant upon Allah. And we become mentally more sharp, more clear. We start to work, you sleep better, you eat better, you move better, you start to exercise more, you start to become more active, and it forces you to change. So the discomfort will lead you to move. The moving is a natural part of progression. If you don't move and you get caught in your comfort, and this is what they talk about when they talk about comfort zone, you get caught in your comfort and you stay in your comfort, what will happen is that you will not grow. And if you stay in that state for a long enough period, you will feel stagnation, and you will feel as though you're stuck and you're not moving, and you will you start to feel apathy, you start to feel boredom, and this all leads to a negative end. So what we want to do is we want to be in a state of constant movement. That slight discomfort is enough to make you move. It's enough to force you to find a solution. This is why you're watching this video, because you want to find a solution. But it's not enough just to watch and learn. You got to take this and actually do it. So the discomfort that you're feeling, it forces you to move. It forces you to change. And this is a good thing. So it's not that self-doubt or doubt itself is always bad. The doubt, it will lead you to some good. And what it will lead you to is certainty, because the more you are showing up for yourself, showing up for your life, showing up for your creator, for your purpose, the more you will believe in yourself, you'll be confident, and your belief will become solid. And that takes us back to number 1, which is believing big, right? So number 3, how we overcome this is that we create an exciting future. Now, this is again based on your beliefs in the first place, because for you to create an exciting future, you got to believe in it. That means that despite the fact that we have these doubts, despite the fact that we have these low-level fears, know that this is actually normal, and it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. And what you can do is you can start to create and plan for your future, because the minute you start to do that, and you do it in the positive, and you do it not trying to prevent all of the things you fear, but you do it in creating an exciting future, like an exciting life. Think about this: when you were younger and you're growing up and you're thinking about your future, you're planning for your future. You're planning for great things. You're planning for the family, the kids, the home, the holidays, all of those things, whatever it is that you had in mind. But you're planning for those things. When you create a great future, you have something to look forward to. This is at the core of being a Muslim. We were trained, or we are trained through the Quran and Sunnah to be future focused. We are future focused people because we are constantly being told and directed to Jannah. Jannah is the highest or the peak of experience. It's the best of experience. It's the eternal life. But ultimately, like, for you to attain that, you have to be future focused, right? And so when you create this exciting future, and Allah does that throughout the Quran, if you see that we're always, the carrot is being dangled in front of you. What is the carrot? It's the paradise beneath which rivers flow. It's all of the, the good that you will have in the hereafter. But it's not just in the hereafter. You get it in the dunya as well. Allah gives us the dunya and the akhirah. This was all created for us. So then if you are envisaging and imagining this future to be amazing, then what will happen? It will get you to overcome your doubts. It's believing in this big future that will change everything, right? So number 4 is aligning your entire life. And when I say entire life, I'm talking about mental, spiritual meaning like your connection to Allah, but aligning your entire life, your mental, your physical, your work, your relationships, everything that you do in your life to your life purpose. The purpose of life is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to attain the best of this dunya and the akhirah, right? Because that's what worship is, that connection to Allah. And what that does for us is that it gives us the best of this life. And it will not just give you the best of this life, but it will give you the best of the akhirah. Now, in order to do that, you have to be ambitious, right? Now, you can't be ambitious if you are constantly following your fears. You have these fears about the future. You have these fears about how things will go wrong. You have all of these negative thoughts that you're constantly following and pursuing, and you're trying to prove them. This is what we do. We don't even realize we're doing it. But you're trying to prove all of your negative thoughts to be true. And you look for evidence. And this is what we do as humans. We look for evidence to build a story of our future in our mind. And as we do that, it debases us. It makes us feel more anxious, more, upset, more angry, and more frustrated. And you get to a point where you actually start to live this out in your speech, in your communication, in your relationships. And people don't like to be around you because you're always negative. And if you're finding that's happening, it's because the negativity is actually seeping out and you don't realize it. You think it's all in your mind, but every time you speak, it's coming out in conversation. And you know this because people don't want to continue the conversation. And you find that even the people that are close to you, they're not paying attention, and your connections, they're not that strong. And in the same way, we start to feel that we're disconnected from Allah. We start to feel that, spiritually, we start to struggle. And when you start to struggle spiritually, you become complacent in your dua, in your salah. You become complacent in all of these things. And why this happens is because we have not aligned all of our thinking, feeling, being, as in doing, to our purpose. When you do that, like, this is a big thing, right? This takes time. I take my students through an entire year to master this process. But so what I'm saying to you essentially is that don't be impatient. Don't be impatient. Be willing to actually take one small step at a time to grow your life into this future vision of yours. Number 3 was the vision, right? Like what you are envisaging of your future. But in order to be able to make that happen, you got to be patient. And patience forces you to overcome your discomfort. And the thoughts that you're having, these thoughts, like essentially, if you stop questioning yourself in the negative, if you stop thinking about your future in the negative, if you stop doing all of that, then what will happen is that you will stop feeling that discomfort. That level of discomfort that makes you move and grow, that's imperative. We need that. But in order to overcome all of the different struggles we have in life, what we want is we want to align our lives with purpose. Your purpose of life is to live in connection to Allah, because Allah created you to actualize your potential. Your potential in life, it will totally transform everything about your life in the present as well as the future. But if you are in a rush to do that, if you're so scared of the future that you're not willing to do anything, then what will happen is that you will follow your fears. In other words, you're following your doubts. If you follow your fears, you follow your doubts, then this is what will happen. If you follow your beliefs, if you are willing to believe, if you are willing to believe over and over again, then what will happen is you will create certainty, you will create confidence, and you will create a future that you will love. And I'm going to leave you on that. Jazakum'Allahu khair. Assalamu alaikum. Hey guys, thanks for listening in on this podcast. If you are ready to uplevel your mind, emotions, and relationships using a Quranic solution, you're going to love this podcast and what we are going to be sharing over the coming episodes. This is the most fundamental training that you're going to go through in your life. You can use it to transform your life, your mental and emotional health, your relationships, how you parent, how you are in your marriage, and truly your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are loving this and you want more of it, click subscribe, or if you want one of our free trainings, go to themuslimlifecoach.org and sign up for the free training. You're going to love it. I'll see you on the inside. Jazakum'Allahu khair.